Good evening, everyone. It is Tough Love Tuesday coming to you live from the Seattle area. And I'm Tracy Cromwell. I'm your certified integrative nutrition health coach and personal trainer. And I have a lot of information to get out to you today. And I'm going to be talking about self-sabotage and what it can do to us as people, and the ramifications that can happen when we have self-sabotage, but then also ways that you can start catching yourself when you're in that mode and be able to make changes in your thought processes, as well as foresee things coming and seeing patterns. So I will be one of the first to say that I had a life full of self-sabotage when I was looking up all this information. And then also when I was writing my book, I would catch myself in self-sabotage. I would also think back on, when I was younger and my behaviors and say, oh my gosh, okay, that was self-sabotage. So especially it happens a lot as I was looking, it can affect you in many areas. In the book, Ingrid and I have what's called our life radar. And it's basically, a circle like this of the areas in your life. And self-sabotage can affect every single one of these. It could be, your home environment, your physical activity, your health, your joy, spirituality, your relationships. It can creep into your finances, your creativity, social life, career, all of those areas. So I thought it was just really important to discuss it tonight. So anyway, great job watching this video and showing up for this video. And so let's go ahead and get started. So what is self-sabotaging behavior? It's defined, it's said to be when behavior is said to be self-sabotaging when it creates problems that interfere with long-standing goals. So like that life radar I just mentioned, say weight loss. For me, I was a yo-yo dieter. I lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight. And I would self-sabotage myself, in that regard. And so I know that happens a lot for people that are trying to understand their relationship with food. It happens anywhere. But the most common self-sabotaging behaviors are procrastination, self-medication with drugs and alcohol, comfort eating, and interpersonal conflict. And although sometimes when you do these things, you procrastinate or you self-medicate with, cocktails or whatever, comfort eating, it's that moment seems to solve the problem, but as we know, it ultimately undermines our goals, especially when we engage in these things repeatedly. I think one of the hardest things for me was I would procrastinate some things where I was actually afraid of. So I will talk more about that. So even if you're aware of your self-sabotage behaviors, there's no guarantee that in itself will be enough to disengage that behavior. You have to take actions to change the behavior. But the great part is you can do it and you can conquer self-sabotaging behaviors. So are you self-sabotaging? So here's a great list of questions for you. You tend to focus on what's not working as opposed to what is working. You tend to fear the future. You'll worry a lot about what ifs and what might happen down the road. You feel like you have no value and find it challenging to recall accomplishments. You are self-sabotaging if you criticize yourself often and can't accept compliments. You compare yourself to others consistently, then feel bad for not measuring up. You could be self-sabotaging when you chase away relationships. If you are in relationship, you quickly find flaws and faults in the other person. And you can feel like you have no purpose in life. Does anybody relate to that? I'm sure you do. I saw myself in several of those things where I was self-sabotaging in my life. There's also symptoms and habits of self-destruction, because self-destruction is in line with self-sabotage. So these symptoms of self-destruction can arise all the time, and are signs that we are trying to self-sabotage. So again, perfectionism, failing to take action, having a negative, pessimistic, or self-defeating mindset. For example, I'm going to fail. I just know it. So, why should I even do anything about something? Overeating is self-destruction. Undereating can be self-destruction. Forced incompetence. That's portraying yourself as unintelligent or incapable. And interesting enough, women tend to do that. And I think that's because it's societal. I think that's getting better, though, that we actually are allowed to portray ourselves as capable and intelligent. Destructive behavior, self-destruction could be bullying. If you're going out of your way to harm others. So I think about that when I was bullied in college and bullied in elementary school. I wonder now what was going on in the minds of those people that chose to harm others and things like that. So what was that self-destruction about? Also doing self-harm. Other self-destructive things are self-pity, drug and alcohol abuse, deliberately alienating yourself from others, refusing help, spending too much. We can do that with our income. Physical neglect. That happens a lot because sometimes we're taught that taking our care of ourselves is selfish. So we go the extreme opposite and we neglect ourselves, getting poor sleep, refusing to exercise. Of course, last week I talked about movement and how important that is. Eating unhealthy foods or foods that don't support our bodies. Failing to maintain basic hygiene, these are all signs of that. And then mental neglect is another one, refusing, avoiding, or failing to confront psychological health issues such as anxiety, depression, OCD, those types of things. We don't want to see it. And it's better if we just tuck it under the rug. But those are basically self-destructive. So, everybody can go through ups and downs all the time, but if you find yourself returning to patterns such as binge drinking, overeating, undereating, self-harm, physical neglect, or any of those items on the list, you're likely to be one that comforts in harmful actions of self-sabotage. It's really something for you to look into. So there are reasons that we participate in self-sabotage, and one of them is called self-worth. So there's millions of factors that go into why we may have a low self-worth, but one thing I found was that it's a lot to do with our brain. Our brain will pick up a story about ourselves or a story about a situation, and it will make that the reality. So it might be a case of, you may have somebody, friend or somebody in your past that hurt your feelings. And then your brain says, okay, all friendships will end with hurt feelings. And so what happens is when you want to challenge your brain with that, that's called cognitive dissonance. And so you can start portraying yourself through this false belief, which basically ends up leading and layering onto a self-worth, a lack of self-worth, because your brain is making these, assumptions about you from, years past. So there's that concept of there's obviously something wrong with me if I don't maintain a strong relationship or whatever. So you'll have this cognitive dissonance, and where it wants to, your mind likes to stick with one thing. I guess they always say, what's it? The old horse can't lose. What is it? The old horse can't learn new tricks. something like that. I can't remember what that is, but anyway, so what can happen is, let's just say you have, you can have someone that you work with that maybe you don't believe that you like. So your brain has formed an opinion about them. And then when did you actually get to know that person? And you realize that that person's actually kind of, actually very nice and very open, but your brain's going to still be like, oh, I already had this view of this person before. And it's just a natural thing our brain does, but we have to catch it when it happens. And, you'll justify, your brain can figure out how it can justify its prior opinion, even though it's been given new information. I hope that makes sense. So the brain likes to get settled into a behavior and likes to cruise along. So it doesn't like this cognitive, dissonance. So again, let's just say you've got a great relationship with a new friend or someone that you're falling in love with. And again, if something happens in that relationship that your feelings get hurt, your brain it's going to protect you and say, oh, all relationships are going to be hurtful, or all relationships with friends are going to be this way, because it takes these pieces of information and it creates its own reality, and it'll do what it can to keep you in that reality because it doesn't want to have to change. And that's one thing I found so significant when I went through my journey with food, because my brain did not want to change, and it didn't like that cognitive dissonance, even though that life I was in was harming my body. It was harming my mindset. It was set, man. It just didn't want to change. And so I found that just incredible. The brain is happy it got you up in the morning. It thinks its job's done, right? And sometimes it's like, hey, she's alive. So why should we have to change? And so then it's up to us to really, manage that cognitive dissonance, to create change. So along with all that comes imposter syndrome. So the higher you may rise in your career, the higher you may be successful. Sometimes, our psyche, which is rooted in the perception that you're not deserving, can sabotage you, and, meaning as you're wanting to rise up in your career, you're wanting to do something about your health, you're wanting to do these things. And as you start to succeed, your brain can just say, hey, nope, this is different. This is different. This is outside our box. And then you can start doing these saboteur type behaviors. So that's doing like the bare minimum you have to, procrastinating, or diverting your attention in order to avoid the fear that your brain is feeling. So self-sabotage has a deep root of being afraid, and it's your brain being challenged and, again, wanting to do the right thing for you. But in some cases, it's just not. It doesn't understand, right? So your brain can find comfort in pain, or, we find comfort in pain, or we're bored with the way things are going. So that's an interesting part of self-sabotage. So you might turn to sabotage due to familiarity or boredom. So we're creatures of habit, but sometimes that means that we can choose consistency over our own happiness. So we'll sabotage ourselves just for that consistency, even though we know we're not maybe in the right place or doing the right thing for us. If we're used to being or feeling overlooked or mistreated, or exploited, it can be really interesting for the brain. That's normal. So it doesn't know any different. For me, I'll bring up, I grew up feeling sick all the time. I didn't know any different. I didn't know that, again, I didn't have to feel this way. So I didn't know any different. So I would continue the same behaviors with the same foods and then not feel good. And then I would, comfort myself with other foods. And that went on for a great deal of time. And so it's interesting. So the other thing we can do sometimes is when things are going well, because we're not used to things going well, the brain will disrupt it and it'll sabotage and cause drama, so because it, for some reason, sees this is out of the norm, it's not comfortable with it, and so we're gonna sabotage it. So let's, for an example, we can be doing really well, taking care of ourselves, getting fit and all this and that, and then someone might start complimenting you, and that could trigger a fear factor of some kind in you, that you then start to revert back to other behavior and start sabotaging that success that you're having. And so what is great about all of this is that self-sabotage is predictable. It's a pattern. And that's the one thing, interesting enough, I've learned in my own life with the things that I have been self-sabotaging, which was a lot, again, was my food and my fitness, my health, and sometimes even in my career and things like that, or in my relationships. I can see it. It's interesting. And but what's wonderful is step by step, you can change that behavior because it is predictable. When Ingrid and I wrote the book, we've written our book, is we do have worksheets as to figuring out, what things happen in certain times of your life, in relation to what was going on, in relation to what was going on at the same time with your food, or when you had highs and lows. And you can kind of see things happening where you can figure out, what your pattern is. So the great part is keeping your eye open for it and recognizing it. So the first step is, in this, is to think back to previous times you've self-sabotaged in your life. And that's what I was explaining, the exercise that we have in our book is, what was going on and what behaviors can you uncover. And this is good too. It's like, can you be your best super sleuth to figure this out? And those are really incredible moments when you figure these things out. So this, again, if you find that you're somebody that you're just not making it, you're just not getting where you want to go and all this and that, really look at what's going on. And I have to do this often because there's things that I would really love to do and I want to do, and I will procrastinate, I will sabotage it, and I realize just that there's a part of me that's afraid. And so now I've seen this pattern and I feel like I can step forward now. So there's things in your life that you can go ahead and, pay attention to. Don't put it under the rug. It's going to be very helpful. Yes. So get intimate with your fear. So, you'll find that sometimes it's just the weirdest thing that you're afraid of, and sometimes the fear, though, is so deep that, it can be hard to look at, but those fears are what's triggering your brain to cause things to happen, that cause you to make decisions and things like that. And so, our brain's going to do everything it can to protect you and to avoid anything that it seems will be a threat to you. And so what's really good is to realize when you're doing self-sabotage, ask that question, what am I afraid of? Okay. And why is this scary? And ask yourself that, what is the worst case scenario if this happened? And then, does this fear really outweigh the benefits of what I would like to accomplish? And so, again, in the book, we talk a lot about that. And I talk a lot about it actually in the body movement section, because there's a lot of fear sometimes that people have with movement. And so they'll procrastinate and they'll sabotage the success of getting their body moving and doing what it needs to do to be healthy. So, but once you've taken the steps and actually taken time to consider the situations head on, the fear inside you will lose a little bit of its power more and more and more each time. So repeat that activity, write in a journal. Once you catch that you're procrastinating or you're doing something like that, again, it's realize it, say, aha. And that's going to show up again in procrastinating, delaying, picking fights with loved ones, overspending, not wanting to look at the true facts of something. And so then you're going to write down, what am I scared of? Why is this scary to me? And then you're going to ask yourself, If that worst case scenario happened, could I handle it? Finally, ask yourself, does this fear overweigh my desires? So, again, it's just that mind wanting to protect you and not wanting to change as well. So, facing and embracing, I think I just talked about that. Confronting our fears means facing discomfort. And sometimes the truth that will be uncovered is actually very difficult, but working through that is incredible. So again, it's going to affect you financially, in your careers, relationships, your health. Me, it was yo-yo dieting was one of the primary things, but that all integrated with everything else, So, so taking care and managing of that fear. The next thing is that you can do to help break up with self-sabotage is, getting new supportive goals and setting something, to strengthen that, setting some small goals every day. Just don't worry about making lists, make lists. And it's kind of fun. It can be small as like, wipe the counter off. Let's see, clean the cat box, please. Things like that, just simple everyday things. So your brain starts getting reward. It feels like, oh, I can write this off of a list. The next thing you can do to help stop sabotaging a big project. Again, I had to learn this with the book and then also wanting to launch an online course. I've really struggled with some of my own self-sabotage, but you've got a big project. You just chunk it down into small little daily tasks and you leave the project, the big one over here, and you just tell your brain, we're just focusing on this right here. And the amazing part also, when I noticed with my health, my weight management, my fitness, was I took my eyes off the final result. I knew what I wanted, but that's not where I spent my days. In my mind, I spent my days on, well, what would someone do daily to get that result? And I broke it down. And so I thought, I just need to do these things daily, or at least 3 or 4 times a week. So what is it that you're sabotaging? And what are the things that you can figure out you should be doing, in smaller increments? The miracles happen in the little things. I think that's a saying, something like that. Wonderful things happen when we do the small stuff that maybe nobody sees, but that will also train your brain, for the reward, which it likes rewards. It will also know that as you go through that process, that you're fine, you're going to be okay, you're not in danger, with some of these goals, those kinds of things. So the other thing will help you with this sabotaging behavior is, stop assuming things. Oh my gosh, my brain can go crazy, assuming all sorts of stuff, causing total chaos in my head, sending me off track, because it's making up stuff it doesn't know anything about, right? So we don't want to fall into that trap. It's harmful, these harmful assumptions, and it's just crazy what the brain can do, making up all these stories. I guess we could do that. It's good if you're a writer or an author of dramas and stuff. You can write all that out and probably have a really great career. But anyway, it is natural to analyze and assess people and situations, to get a sense of surroundings. That makes sense. But we really get into trouble when we allow our imagination to wander too far. It leads us into these worst case scenarios, which cause anxiety, frustration, and fear that they say is like, boy, of all the worries that we've had in our lifetime, how many of them actually happened? And I would best to say, if I looked at all my worries that my brain made so dramatic, what really happened out of all of them? Oh my gosh, I'd have to sit down and really think hard about that. So anyway, so the other interesting fact is that, the assumptions that we make about the way people feel about us, or say the assumptions I might think you feel about me, are really reflections on how I would be feeling about myself, or they're reflections on how you feel about you when you're looking at it that way. So It's really good to know when your self-sabotaging thoughts start writing these stories because they're really good at it. It could be stuff like this. If you're feeling ignored, alone, or abused or anything, it usually this behavior mindset comes in. They treat me this way because, or they must think of, that I'm this, or what are you actually doing? What we're doing is actually projecting our own thoughts about ourselves. So when we don't check that behavior, we don't realize that we're making these silly assumptions, and we're actually, we can then have our brain making, false judgments about other people that don't even exist, but we've made it all up in our mind because our mind's really good at that. So when you start assuming negative things, you attract negative thoughts. So to fix that is to catch yourself, and then distract yourself with something you enjoy, or something that I like to do. I talk about this is validating it, but I had a horrible negative Nelly, in my head. And I apologize to anyone named Nelly or Ned. I apologize. But there's negative Ned, negative Nelly in your mind. And mine was just so awful. Oh, and she could tell tons of stories that, never came true. So anyway, watch that self-talk and the assumptions and catch yourself, and then release it. Release the outcome, because you can't do anything about any of that anyway. And most of it's not real anyways. And so it'll truly sabotage your opportunity for the life that you would like to have. This next one, which is great. I love this. I was like, oh, so helpful, was do less, but do it better. We have been told to multitask. We've been told to accomplish so many things in one day that we don't even know what happened in the day. We're just scrambling from one thing to another. So the advice is to keep days simple and meaningful. Do our best to not allow overwhelm, to things that aren't a priority to us. Don't waste your time on things that don't really matter. This is a good one. Learn to say no, and start getting used to delegating duties to people around you. Delegating was hard for me. And then take time to do things for yourself that you enjoy. So if you like to cook or hike or, go fishing, things like that, make time put on the calendar to do those things. And another one's like, if you love being with animals, volunteer at a shelter, stuff like that. And that's one thing that we have in our book, again, is in this Life Radar. It's about, joy, what brings you joy, and schedule it. And don't allow that negative person in your brain tell you that you shouldn't do it. But yeah, doing things that we're passionate about can really help bring our stress down, which can control that self-talk. Another good thing to help us stop self-sabotaging is get an accountability partner. Say you're working on some goals, but nobody around you in your friend circle of friends is wanting to do that. So sometimes that's got to do with, it could be it's usually fitness or healthy habits. Go ahead and find someone else that you can go to the gym with to help you be more accountable. Or, now we're in the middle of COVID, so at least someone that you can be accountable to, that you're working on your health, or you're working on your career, or you're studying that course that you wanted to do, or you're taking the painting class, or whatever it might be. Find somebody that can help keep you, steady on your goal. So when self-sabotage does show up, there's someone you can say, oh my gosh, I've missed 2 painting classes, or I've not done this, I think I'm sabotaging. And they can say, okay, you got this, So finding someone that can help keep you accountable. Yeah. So the other thing is joy. I love this quote by Milton Erickson. It's, life will bring you pain all by itself. Your responsibility is to create joy. So there are always going to be times then we realize that we need to let go of something painful that's going to happen, and that could be guilt, or toxic relationship. However, it's never easy to let go of something that we've become accustomed to. So we can get stuck in the middle of two realities, where we are and where we want to be, and fear of the unknown, because the brain wants to protect us. Fear of the unknown can hold us back, but we can choose to not let it. And so, step into your joy. I feel like sometimes through this career path I've done, I feel like I'm just coming out and trying to step into my joy, and my brain is afraid. It's really scared. And, I'm forcing it to do things that it feels are dangerous, which every time I do something, it realizes, oh, we lived. And this fear was really something it didn't need to, save me, from whatever it felt that was, going to happen, like doing these podcasts, and live video. Oh my gosh, 3 years ago, there's no way this was happening. I knew I wanted to do it, but my fear was so great that I couldn't do it. So, I'm still working on areas like this, but yeah, stepping into your joy, creating the future, the life that you want. Here's a good one as well. Act of self-love. We are taught that self-love, self-compassion can be very selfish, but one way to solve the problem of self-sabotage is to accept more love into your life, which of course can be hard if you're one, that feels unworthy of it, but you can always, I guess I want to say, if you're always putting yourself into destructive, self-sabotaging situations, you aren't allowing yourself to expand your worth and reach your full potential. So since you can't control the love you receive from other people, the best place to start, and I love this, the best place to start is with self-love. And there's great ways to practice it. And again, Ingrid and I talk about it, self-love and self-worth. And that has to happen inside you to allow you to move forward. So look at that. But, little things, sometimes for me, it's just allowing myself the opportunity to take care of myself, which I used to not allow to happen. But it can be buy yourself some flowers, sing loudly to your favorite song, which I heard someone doing today, or driving home and parking out in the parking lot. If you're on your own, cook your favorite meal for yourself. What's one amazing thing you can do for you is, provide for you what you would like to provide to others. Let's see. Treat yourself to a concert, treat yourself to a play, art museum, or musical performance. Join a walking group. Like I said earlier, sign up for a class. Take a hike and pack your favorite snacks, for a picnic in nature. That's one thing, that we've really worked on doing this last year, is spending time hiking and things like that. Write down some of your favorite quotes or mantras and post them. Plan, right now, can you plan doing something with your friends to have something to look forward to? Anything that you like, whatever it is, creative. But, I like to specify, if you don't take care of yourself, do that, really take that to heart and start caring for yourself, your body. Your body, I'm always saying this, your body's your number one teammate. And so one way of self-love is to really take care of it and honor it. This is another good one. Praise yourself rather than waiting for others to do it for you. I used to always wait. I always waited for permission to be given things, because I didn't feel I was worthy of stepping forward and expecting or asking. So this was a big one for me to learn. So when you do something you're proud of, go ahead and dwell on it for a while, relish the experience of doing something that you've accomplished, and, and savor in that. And that's not narcissistic. It's an act of self-care that you're, valuing what you've done, you know. So, that's give yourself props to go in and ask for that raise, or, you got an amazing speaking gig, or you did something, and, whatever it could be, you know, you earned a certification, you finished college, whatever it is, just, celebrate in that. Being aware of your accomplishments will really boost your mood and help. So, yeah, when we're waiting for others around us, which is something I just did forever, to congratulate us, our self-worth and our self-esteem will be lower, So, and the reason is because we've given our power for our self-esteem and self-worth to someone else. And I always did that. I always did that. So, I never valued my accomplishments. This is what was coming from my negative self-sabotaging head, was I never valued my accomplishments. I was just a loser anyway. And if I could do something, then well, that meant nothing. Anyone could do it. And so I always devalued my accomplishments. And so we want to make sure we value what we accomplish. And it can be anything. Sometimes I can imagine, I know when I was a mom, just, getting the kids fed, the diapers changed, and off to bed. That was a great accomplishment. But, like I said, in other areas, we want to praise ourselves for what we're capable of doing, I know I said I had a lot tonight, so I'm still got a little bit more time here, but listen to your body. Again, I talk about it in here. We talk about it a lot as symptoms as a gift. Our body's talking to us all the time. So one of the best ways we can practice self-care that helps us to stop being saboteurs of our life is to listen and to take care of our physical body. Like I just said too, our body is our number one teammate. So if you're consistently tired, what's your sleep schedule like? And, start looking up ways to help create a great sleeping environment. If it's other things, figure that out and take the time. If you're feeling burnout and you drink Red Bulls all the time, choose something else. Your body's not going to be able to handle these Red Bulls very long. If you're overweight, reassess what you're putting into your body, reassess your body movement. Okay. These are all signs, and, being tired, overweight, other areas, again, we talk about in the book, symptoms as a gift. Your body's talking to you. So learning its language is really important. So if we ignore our bodies, it means we're not putting ourselves first. And so learning how to do that will be one more step of, stopping self-sabotage behavior. The other thing my brain was really good at is it had decided that everything that went wrong in my life was my body's fault. It had nothing to do with the fact of what I was eating, the fact that I wasn't moving my body, that I had silly stuff going on in my head. I wanted to take no responsibility for it. Once I started taking responsibility for it, things changed. So with that, by taking responsibility, focus on the positive. So shifting that negative self-talk, again, we talk about it in the book. It's a lot easier said than done. But when you have that negative, voice, like in your head that says, it always happens to me, or it's selfish for you to take care of yourself, or, oh, you want that new job? Well, you're not good enough. Oh, you want to start a business? Well, forget that. You don't know how to do that. So one thing you can do is turn it around and have what's called affirmations, positive statements. So one can be, I deserve to be happy, or I've worked hard. I deserve the career, that I am going for. And if you feel something in your gut, like this fight, sometimes I'll get it like, that affirmation's not even true, especially if you're somebody that's felt unworthy all your life, you might have a hard time to say, I deserve being happy or I deserve self-care. So one trick that I have found, I shouldn't say a trick, but a really great way to get my mind to get on board with me is I'll say things like this. We might not know how to do it right now, but I would really love to learn how to take care of myself right now. And all of a sudden the brain's like, oh, okay. Or, gosh, I may not have that dream career right now, but I would love to take the steps to move forward so that I can have that career. And then what happened with me was my brain was like, oh, well, how do we solve this? Okay. Yeah, I kind of can get on board with you. And that, and I think I learned that from T. Harv Eker. So, but yeah, if your brain's not buying in, change the statement a little bit so it can start getting on board with you. And let's see, almost done. Oh, here's a good one. Think of failures as opportunities. I've failed so many times in my life. And when my belief was, oh my gosh, I failed once, I was a horrible person. My brain was like such a perfectionist that wouldn't allow anything to happen that wasn't perfect. And so again, that's all fear-based, right? So really learning, learning from your failures. So if you are struggling with your weight or you've struggled with diets, use those experiences to push you forward to, into, knowing what doesn't work. Right. And so, yeah, we talk about that in the book. Another fun thing, sit up straight, changes all dynamics of your energy. So, slouching can really make you feel kind of crummy and lazy and lethargic. And for those of you listening on the podcast, I'm slouching now. But if you sit up straight like I am now, my energy is totally different. So change your body. And then sometimes just avoid negative people. Some people just see the world through these eyes where everything's a challenge, everything's horrible. You know what? You don't need to do that. You can step away from them, and keep a nice distance from those types of people. Hang out with others that, have an outlook that's more positive on life and look at the big picture. If you got a parking ticket, is that really going to matter in 5 years? So sometimes, yes, there are things that happen that impact us for the rest of our lives, but a lot of the things are small things that our brains can grab onto and making things really hard for us. So I think last thing, I told you there was a lot. Mirror, mirror, look in the mirror. So this is a good one. Learn to forgive yourself for past actions and cut yourself a break. So when negative thoughts come creeping in, stop them in their tracks and counteract them, with either a positive statement or just say, hey, I was doing the best that I could at that time and we learned from it and now we're moving on, that kind of thing. And you can, even defend yourself the way you would protect a friend or a parent or a sibling to this negative thought process and say, hey, back off. And you can say things like, hey, stop it, and your mind's going to go, what? So it's really interesting. One of the statements here that I found was you can say to yourself, hey, stop that. You know that all that negativity isn't helping anyone here. We can't afford to put ourselves down right now because I've got way too much going for me, and you can even do that in the mirror. So, scold yourself, scold that part of your mind and rein it in. So, it all might sound silly, but it is helpful. And so sometimes all you need is to hear those right words. And then, gosh, if they're coming out of your own mouth, that's even better. So maybe you could even write a script that you say out loud when those thoughts start coming that are going to push you into that self-sabotage and self-destructive behavior. So that's all I had today. I know it was a long podcast this time, broadcast, but it was just something I really wanted to talk about. Again, if you find yourself struggling with self-sabotage around your diet, your lifestyle, things like that, honestly, get the book, Your Personal Journey with Food. It is not a diet book. It's a book to figure out how you're thinking and why you're thinking the way you are about yourself, your food, and all those areas of your life that's, will give you that power to start making those changes that you want to make. And again, the Tracy from 15 years ago would have no clue and have not foreseen what I've changed into, 15 years later, because she was depressed, overweight, pre-diabetic, a perfectionist to the nth degree, trying to please everybody. She did not give herself any credit. She was wonderful, and I appreciate having been her, but she would not believe me today that I was who I am today. And so what I want to say is, if you start working on things a little bit at a time, it doesn't matter how long it takes, you'll get there. Okay. And so, again, notice when you're doing that sabotaging behavior, that destructive behavior, stop yourself. Say, hey, why am I doing this? What's the fear around it? And start resolving those things. And so with that, lastly, I want to thank my book for some of the resources for tonight, but also for psychologytoday.com, existbetter.co, huffingtonpost.com. Also, we are sacredbeings.com, and lonerwolf.com, and lastly, rncentral.com. That's where I got this, a lot of this information. So I hope you're walking away with some great insights on how our mind works and how it drives our behavior. And again, it doesn't like change, so we have to work with it and teach it new things. Old dog, you can teach an old dog new tricks. So that's what I was trying to say earlier. But, go ahead and make a conscious effort to be resilient and go through this process. No matter what hurdles come your way, I always figure sometimes that the universe has hit me upside the head with 2x4s all the time to get me in line where I need to go. But catch those negative thought patterns. They are patterned. Figure out what the fear is based around them. And so if you have any other questions, you can always hop over to my website, tracycromwell.com. And there's a little appointment schedule option that will pop up, or go ahead and message me, and I'd be happy to talk with you. All right. Take care and have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday.